Welcome to the Elevated Chat Room. It's your host, Dwayne Malone, and also Mr. Lonzo Jones. Today we have a guest, and Lonzo will tell you a little bit about our guest. Let's go.
Yes. Before we get to our guest, we got a topic for you guys today. It's called Brighter Tomorrows, the Transformation Power of Youth Grief Counseling. So we got a special guest with us on today, Miss Lexie Mauldon. She is a therapist, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Take it over, Miss Lexie.
Hello. So yes, I'm Miss Lexie Mauldon, and I am the Development and Family Services Coordinator over at the Healing Place, which is a nonprofit in Muscle Shoals. So I work with kids over there, and just like you said, I do grief counseling.
Okay. So before we even get deep into these questions, how did you get involved to the point where you're a grief counselor?
It was a long journey with many twists and turns. I had no idea that I wanted to be a grief counselor, but I dealt with a lot of loss in my life, and I wish I would have had somebody like me now there for me then. So as I kind of came up and I went to grad school and I was figuring out what the heck I wanted to do with my life, I found the Healing Place as an intern, a lowly intern, and they took me on and I loved it and I've never looked back.
Wow. Sweet. I love when people say that they're doing it because they realize at one point in their life, in their younger life, that they needed somebody that was them. Like you said, you needed you. Like how like that's powerful when you think about it. Man, if everybody that's going through a situation, if they had somebody, you know, their future self.
Yes.
Man, how much, man, come on.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
It's a lot. It's powerful.
Yeah. Dwayne, you got something, my guy?
I do not.
So we just gonna keep flowing. All right.
Let's flow.
Okay.
Got a question for you.
Okay.
It says, what are some signs or indicators that a young person may benefit from grief counseling? And how can parents or educators recognize these signs?
So yeah, that's a huge question. And it's got a lot of answers, right? Because we're all different. Humans are different. And one of the main things that you learn when you go to counseling school is just how diverse our brains are.
Okay.
Our grief is just as diverse. So the way that you feel loss is not the way that I feel loss, is not the way that he feels lost.
Yes.
That's good.
It's like totally different.
Okay.
So I can't give you a straightforward answer to that question, unfortunately, but people a lot smarter than me have come up with a few really good things that we can point out to tell you, hey, if you have a kid that is doing this, this, and this, maybe you need to push pause and see what is happening. And a lot of it looks like other mental illness. You know, we all work with kids, so we know when kids are struggling. But if they're not sleeping, if they're having major mood swings, if they're acting out and you can't find a reason for why, if you see their grades slipping, their behavior is changing, personality is changing, because we know our kids, so we know when something's not right with them. That's when we need to think like, oh. But the number one thing is, have they experienced a loss? Because if they have, they're showing signs.
Gotcha. Now, is grief, the type of grief you do, or when they're talking about grief, is that pretty much just dealing with a loss, or can it be any other kind of grief, or it's just with loss?
Yeah. Well, so I love that you pointed that out because, grief is not death specific.
Okay. That's right. Okay. That's good, dude.
Yeah, it's not. But now the main thing that we focus on, I will say, over at the Healing Place is grief due to death. But that's not the only thing. You can be experiencing grief because you just moved here, of all places, from somewhere far away. And you're grieving the loss of your home. You know, you're grieving the loss of those people around you. Okay. You could be grieving, yes, because you experienced a death. You could be grieving because your parents just got a divorce. And your whole life changed. That's grief. Okay. So we see all of that.
Okay. So which one do you see the most?
The most is, of course, grief due to death. That's the main thing. But those other kinds are oftentimes overlooked. And then that can be just as detrimental because we don't think to look for grief, like I said, if you're going through a divorce.
Now, that makes sense because that's why I asked the question, because I don't know if we actually see it as grief or just, you know, an obstacle or a setback or just an issue.
Yes.
You know, not necessarily grief. What actually is grief?
Yeah. Well,
like when you really think about it, like what is grief?
I know you say it so many times it's not a word anymore. That's my life. It's a lot of things, but it really just looks like all of these emotions that you're feeling that don't have there's a really cheesy saying that is grief is love with no place to go.
Wow.
And
I like that.
it's a big truth because it really is. You lose somebody and you have all these feelings inside of you. And you imagine being 5, being 12, and somebody dies. You barely know what death means, much less how to deal with it. And you don't understand that you're going through grief. You're sad, you're angry, you're disappointed, you're guilty because you're alive and they're not.
Man.
That's what grief is.
That's good stuff. Man, you know your stuff, huh?
A little bit.
How long you been doing this?
Oh, gosh. I've been at the healing place for going on 4 years.
Okay.
I've been a counselor for a little bit longer than that. But I've been dealing with grief since I was like 3. So, depends what you mean.
I got you. I feel you. I had wrote a note down that says different ways that people grieve.
Yeah.
What are some, like, so you said that we grieve in a lot of different ways. So like somebody may go to prayer.
Yes.
Or somebody may, have to, vent. I don't know. What are some ways that people grieve?
Well, so again, like let's think about mental health, right? Mental illness. And we've gotten a lot better. We're still not great, but we've gotten a lot better as a society about understanding that mental illness is a thing. It's an issue. It's a need. And that it is so incredibly diverse.
Okay.
So you interchange mental illness with grief.
Okay.
Grief is incredibly diverse. Just like our brains. Our complete neurochemistry, we know from science, we know statistically that when you experience a trauma, neural pathways in your brain are rewired. It literally rewrites your brain for you. When a 7-year-old experiences a death, that's a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So that means their brain has chemically changed. They are not the same. So they're grieving. And they're going to do that differently depending on their age, depending on their environment, depending on their race, their socioeconomic status, depending on where they are in the country. It's all a factor. Not to mention religion, culture, all of it.
Wow. So it really is that diverse.
Yes.
Man, that's good though, because I'm thinking that it's only like maybe 1 or 2 ways that people, grieve.
Well, it's like you think about it, you see, and maybe you don't, but if you start looking, you will. Some kids or people, just humans in general, they experience a loss, and maybe you see somebody that cries a lot. That's kind of what we think of, right? Like somebody dies, you cry, you become real tearful. You're emotional outwardly, like we see it. But that's not the only picture. You see kids who have somebody who dies, and they're angry.
Yeah, I can see
they
that.
are mad at the world because how dare the world take their person?
Yeah.
Or they're mad at, if they believe in God or if they believe in a higher power, they're mad at that person because how dare they? So there's a lot of anger wrapped up in grief. Or you see some kids who just completely don't change outwardly. You're like, did they even notice that their mom died?
They've never dealt with it.
They've never dealt with it. They push it down. They're repressors. So they completely shove it down to the depths of their soul and they ignore it. Except what we know about trauma, because remember, grief is trauma, is it comes out.
Eventually.
That's good. So I do have a question. So what is the most common sign that you see?
That's tough.
Well, you can answer tough questions. You got it.
I'll do my best.
Yes.
Well, okay. I can't give you a blanket answer, but let's do by age. So I'll say under 12. Okay. The most common that I have seen. So this might not be true for any counselor or person that works with grief.
Okay. Personal experience. That's cool.
Yeah, but me working with kids under 12, I'll say the most common maybe indication that there is a big problem is their attachment style changes. So that means maybe all of a sudden there's like, let's say dad died. They're super clingy to mom. Like they are having attachment issues. They don't want mom or any other adult in their life out of their sight. So then at school, they're having all these behavior issues. Like they're acting out. They're wanting to go home. They're not completing their schoolwork. They're getting in trouble just so they can go home.
Wow.
Right? Because they got to have eyes on their person or else their person might die. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you go above 12, I would say anger. That's the main one.
I can see that though.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. So under the age of 12, they have attachment issues because they feel like they can't process the fact that the person that passed away, they feel like the next person may go.
Yes.
And then over the age of 12, they're just mad.
They're just mad.
Yeah,
They're mad at
they can't
the
figure it
world.
out. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let me ask you this question. It says, how do you tailor your counseling approach to meet the diverse needs and backgrounds of the young people you work with?
Yeah. Well, so again, that's huge. It's a big deal, and like we've talked about this whole time, how diverse it is. It's major, and diversity means a lot of things. It means diversity in grief itself, and it means diversity in the human race, right?
Okay.
As people. So there's like two lines of thinking here. So knowledge is power is one answer.
Okay.
I've went through a lot of school and through a lot of training to be able to know what to look for and how to help these kids. So that's the one thing. I have so much more to learn and so much more to grow, but I'm responsible for continuing that.
Okay.
That's how I know. And that's how I know that I can help people who are grieving. But also, I have a huge responsibility because I have to make sure that I am socially, culturally, racially competent to know how to help these kids because grief doesn't discriminate.
Right.
It's
death, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Death does not discriminate. So kids of all shapes, sizes, colors, and walks of life walk through my doors.
Yeah.
And I got to be ready to help them. And it doesn't matter where they come from, what religion they practice, what culture that they've experienced. If they're going to sit in front of me, I have got to know how to help them.
So it sounds like, and it may be something simple, but it sounds like as a counselor in a diverse field, you have to be diverse yourself.
Yeah, I do.
So you have to be flexible and adaptable and open-minded and willing to, like you say, continue your knowledge as well, continue learning. And you can tell because you can vibe.
Yeah.
Like you vibe with.
Yeah.
If I got to vibe with this person, this set, that type of person. You know what I'm saying, or whatever it is. You can tell you have that personality where you can just I can just flow with it.
Yes.
With whoever.
I gotta be a little bit of a chameleon. Like,
gotcha.
But that's a great thing. It's a tool, but it's hard.
So I understand that.
So imagine if everyone was like that, had that type of personality. Where they could just see the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we get so caught up in thinking that me, how I am, how I'm raised, and everything about me is better than how you were and how you were raised, how you look, how you dress, where you come from, how you think.
Yeah.
When that's not the case, we're just different.
Yeah.
Different doesn't mean better.
No.
We're just different,
in our own ways.
Yeah.
It's that open-mindedness. Like, if you can have that, like, you can really do anything. But especially if you're trying to go into work, well, A, working with kids, and B, working with mental health. If you're not open-minded, I don't know how you're going to do it.
Yeah. I can see that because, like I said, you're dealing with, it's not grief and mental illness is not predicated to one type of person or one cultural type of person. It's everybody.
Yes.
I mean, everybody. That's one thing that we all have in common. Yep. We're going to experience grief.
Yeah, I have a bad joke. that I say because, like, we could never, but I'm like, as a grief counselor, I need a t-shirt that says I am inevitable. Because, like, everybody is going to experience loss. Like, it does not matter who you are. It's going to happen, whether it happens when you're 5 or when you're 50.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense. So, let me ask you this. Can you share any resources or activities that families can use at home to continue the healing process outside of counseling sessions? So what can they do at home?
Yes. So the number one thing that I tell people, because I work with the parents too. Like that's one of the number one things, because I can't get through to the kid if I can't get through to the parent, right?
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah, and that's tough. That's tough. But anyways, so I tell them the number one thing that they can do after somebody has died is not make death taboo. Because we are not a culture and we are not a society who is open and comfortable about talking about death. It's like a bad word. You don't speak it. It's like Voldemort. You just don't say it. But that's not real reality. It's not realistic to go through life that way. And so if you've got a kid in your home that has experienced a loss, but you're not willing to bring it up at the dinner table, well, they don't think they're allowed to have feelings about it. And so then they become one of those kids I talked about earlier who's a repressor. They push it down and eventually they erupt. And that's when we have a problem.
Okay.
So I tell parents, guardians, whoever, you got to talk about it.
Mhm.
You have to bring it up. And that means in big ways and small ones.
Mhm.
You know, if you're eating shrimp and you know dad hated shrimp, say that. Like, ugh, he would have hated this. And don't shy away from bringing that person up. Don't think we can't speak their name because they're no longer here. We talk about it and connect as a family in that way. Because if you keep their memory alive, then the kid thinks that it's okay to keep their memory alive. And that's really healing.
Okay. So I know, like, my grandfather passed away. I went through a phase where I found out that I can control my emotions.
Yeah.
You know, I found out that, you know, like, I would be like, let's say I'm in the shower, and next thing you know, I'm just crying. But it was tears of sadness.
Yeah.
And then, like, a week later, I'll pull up in the garage and I'm crying. But this time it's tears of joy.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I realized that when you really think about it at its core, we actually control our emotions.
Mm.
You know, we can decide in the moment, do I want to be sad that my granddad passed away?
Yeah.
Or do I want to, you know, take pride and remember all the great things and great times, great memories that we created when he was here?
Yeah.
And so that was just that was an aha moment for me. It was like, no, you control your emotions. Don't let your emotions control you.
Yeah. Well, and specifically the way that I work it out with kids is actually, so it's what you said, but it's not. We can't really control our emotions, but we can control our reactions to our emotions.
Okay.
Because, like, I'm going to get mad when I'm going to get mad.
True.
And that's true. Period. Like, it's just going to happen. But what I do possess control of is how I react to that anger.
Okay, that makes sense.
I control that. And so that's how grief is, too. Like, you can't control that you're experiencing this loss and that it's painful as a kid, as a family, but you can control how you react to it and how you frame the family around it. And that is going to make all the difference to the kid.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Is there any other thing you would tell a parent or somebody that's going through grief? One more thing that they can possibly do while they're at home.
Yeah, well, so one thing, again, I said knowledge is power, but also that. So Google it, like, figure out what you need to look for in your kid to know whether they need to see me. Like,
okay.
Know that grief it's not a mental illness, but it is such a strong indication of if you're going to have issues. And you can look for, like what I talked about earlier, those signs that, hey, this kid is struggling because somebody has died. So but you need to know that. If you don't know, you don't know. You're not going to know what to look for.
So as a parent, we have to educate ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Be knowledgeable of signs that our kids may show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Like, I'm learning. You know, that's what I like about these podcasts, man. Like, the elevated chat room, man. Like, hey, y'all ain't just learning, we learning too. Elevate your mind.
Elevate
your life.
Okay,
we in here.
Gotta have a catchphrase.
Okay, you gotta have one. Gotta have when you throw it out there. You know, alley-oop sometime. All right. Well, let me ask you this then. What role do you believe technology and social media play in how young people experience and express grief? And how do you address this in your counseling practice? It's a lot.
Yeah, social media is huge. Oh my gosh. And it's such a divisive topic. Like, I feel like somebody's going to yell at me when I talk about it. Yeah. Because everybody has such strong feelings about social media.
Different angles.
Yes. And I get it. But, like, I mentioned to you that I mainly work with teenagers, like, in my personal, like, counseling practice. I work with teenagers the most. I still see the little ones, but mostly teenagers. So that means I talk about social media every day. It's just a reality. Mm-hmm. And what the kids will tell you is that one of their number one frustrations is that the adults in their lives want to pretend that it's not important or that it doesn't matter. Social media is a tool.
Okay, a tool for what?
For anything, but it's a tool for grief. That's for sure. And people don't know that. It's all about how you teach a child to formulate boundaries around social media. That's the important thing. And that's what I teach kids. Because it's just like anything else. We can't shy away from it. We can't pretend that it's going to go away in 10 years and then we're going to be able to ignore it. Social media is here to stay.
True.
It is a fact of everyday life. Mm-hmm. And whether you try to limit your kids' access to social media is your own prerogative. But they're going to see it. They're going to have access to the internet eventually. So we can either figure out how to use it as a tool or we can figure out how it can be a weapon. And I choose for it to be a tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I try to teach kids to look at it too. Just like everything else that is on social media, grief is there too.
Mm-hmm.
There are websites, chat rooms, forums that are designed by kids for kids. And if you don't know that, well, you don't know, but they're incredible. There's a website called Grief Sucks, and it's literally designed by teenagers for teenagers who have lost somebody.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's actually one of my favorite things. And they have a podcast similar to this one that is other teenagers talking about what it's like when somebody dies when you're a teenager and how to handle that. They've got videos. They make really funny memes and TikToks. And again, it's all surrounding grief and loss. And so kids can find that and they can look at it. And so I try to direct them to the areas of the social media world that are good and that can help them.
So basically, you're like you say, you're using it as a tool, as something that's going to benefit the kids. Mm-hmm. So there's ways for them to reach out. There's ways for them to get in contact with other teens that have experienced what they're experiencing. It's used for networking, but in a good way.
Yes.
So what's the negative side of the social media and technology that you've experienced?
Well, so the number one thing is bullying. That's the main thing, and that's the sucky part, because yes, it does happen. And as much as we would like to think that nobody's going to take advantage of something like a death and use that as bullying, they do.
That's crazy.
Yeah, wow. They do. So I do see that. I see kids getting bullied online because your mom died and somebody wants to make fun of that. And that's awful. So we have a lot of conversations about what we can control in those situations, which is tough because it's not a lot, honestly, but our reactions to it, that's the answer. So bullying, that's the main issue. And then, of course, the dark parts of the internet and social media that we want them to stay away from. Mm-hmm. And that's up to guardians, to the adults, to have some controls in place.
And you would think that, like, when somebody's experiencing a loss, going through grief, that you would show some type of sympathy and empathy and not, poke the bear, as they say. I mean, that's one of the lowest levels of
it's tough
of like sickness.
Yeah, I see it in young kids too. Like I have elementary schoolers that'll, I'll hear that they've been made fun of at school because they've got a dead dad or whatever their person is, and I'm just like, ugh, like it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But it happens, and so I try to not prepare kids, but help them work through that if it does happen.
Yeah. So, I would never thought that. I mean, I know kids do some stuff, but geez, well, that's heavy.
Hurt people. So they're hurting another kid because they're hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's an important realization that they usually come to, that maybe I can help them work around to be able to work through that pain.
Okay.
Let me ask you this real quick. So, a lot of times how some people can work a job in their field and they do it for so long that they kind of get immune to doing it.
Sure.
Where they kind of lose being sensitive to the situation.
Yeah.
What keeps you grounded and sensitive to what you do every day on a regular basis?
It's tough. I'm really good at compartmentalizing because I have to be. I hear about grief and trauma all day, every day. Like, people's worst days or what they're bringing to me. And that's tough. Mm-hmm. But I see the change. That's the main thing. I watch how it helps these kids and these families, the whole family, but really the kids, they all come to me, especially like the teenagers, and they don't want to be there. Yeah. They're being dragged there by their teeth. Like, they don't want to be there. And they are not about to tell some little lady about their life and their pain. They're like, okay, sure, I'm going to talk to you. Never. But eventually we get there, and then they start scheduling their own appointments because they want to come to therapy.
That's good.
Yeah, and then I see that their grades are better, and they've got friends, and that they're handling their emotions, and they teach me a new coping skill, and I'm like, wow. And so it's that. Like, on my hard days, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get lost in how hard it is.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned earlier that you also said you experienced some grief.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said starting at the age of 3.
Yeah.
So would you say that your life, your experiences also kind of helps you push through those walls sometimes?
For sure, yeah. So I grew up with a grandmother. I call her Granny. That's why I wear this butterfly necklace. It was hers. She was incredible. but she had Alzheimer's. And so she never knew who I was. She never knew me. So I spent my whole life grieving her, literally, from the time that I knew who the woman was until the day that she died in 2018. She never knew me. She didn't know that she had a granddaughter named Lexie, not for real, like maybe a little bit in the beginning, but not for real. I spent my whole life grieving her, and I didn't know that until I knew it when I was grown.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. And my family helped take care of her because she had to have somebody. She had to have a caregiver. My papa was incredible, but he was old too. So we helped take care of her. And I always knew somewhere in the back of my mind that I wanted to work in like the realm of like death and dying. It sounds so morbid, but I actually thought I was going to be a mortician at one point. And because of that experience, because of growing up with her and experiencing that my whole life, I was like, again, I needed somebody to talk to about grief and about what it felt like to lose somebody before they were even gone. And I didn't have anybody. I just didn't know that that even existed. So now I try to be that. But I think because I have such a close experience with it, and I know what these kids are feeling, like I may not know their exact situation, but I know their pain. I'm better equipped to help them.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
That's good.
Like I said, man, that's what it's all about. We all go through things in life, not just for ourselves. But once we learn from it, get set free from it, then now it's time for us to teach and help and lend a hand to the next person.
Yeah.
I always say that you're not gifted for yourself. You know, even if you're a musician, you don't just sit at the house and play music for yourself.
Right.
You teach others and then you go play for others. Same thing with every other gift that we have. So continue to use your gift.
I'm going to do my best.
It's needed.
Yeah,
It's needed. And it's even if you never get it, it's appreciated as well.
Thank you.
Very appreciated. Because like I said, I'm just sitting here learning myself, and it's like, man, like, you know, I didn't really have too many deaths when I was younger. But my cousin passed away last year, 33 years old, and my aunt, we've been trying to get her to go. Like, you can just tell, hey, you need to go to therapy. You know, you can see signs. It's just like you're in your room all the time.
Right.
You know, just little things like that. Now that since we're talking about it, it just came to my mind. And I'm like, I'm going to get back on. I'm like, hey, aunt, have you went to therapy?
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it feels like to lose a child.
Yeah.
My God. Like,
that's so different. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, you think about what it's doing for these kids, because again, by the time you're aunt's age, like, you've probably experienced more than just this one loss. Like, she's probably lost other people in her life, unfortunately. What if she would have learned when she was a kid how to handle that? What if she would have been in therapy or in counseling for the first loss that she experienced, whenever that was in her life? It sets you up for success in the future, and to be able to know, like, A, therapy is not as scary as we think it is. It's something that I can do and that will help me. And B, like, it gives you your tool belt to be able to handle it in the future. And that's what I want for these kids. I want, when they're your aunt's age, I want them to be able to handle it.
Now, when you say, let's get into that.
Yeah.
You say handle grief.
Yes.
Have we talked about ways to handle grief? Did we talk about that?
Maybe just a little bit, but not a ton.
Okay, give us I know you said to talk about it at the table. But that wasn't I don't think that was the exact question. So give me 3 ways that you would recommend any age to handle to begin to handle grief.
Yes.
And
well,
Lexie, before you go there too, just because of the subject that Lonzo was just talking about his aunt, in a situation like that, because you probably can pull it all together, in a situation like that, what would you recommend a loved one doing to persuade or encourage someone to seek out for grief counseling?
That's tough, because so I told you sometimes kids are brought to me like literally dragged by their teeth.
But
like,
they're
that's
kids though.
Yes, but they're kids.
Yeah.
But the thing is, therapy doesn't work unless you want it to.
Gotcha.
Right. Unless you're ready.
Oh yeah.
And that's hard because you have to at least be ready to try.
Yeah.
You may not be ready to process some things. You may not be ready to talk about certain traumas or experiences, whatever. But you have to at least be willing to try. That's the first thing you need. So somebody might not be ready. Sometimes kids are brought to me and I'm like, they're not here yet. They're not ready. And that's okay. You come back to me when they are and we'll try again.
Yeah.
But so that's like the first thing I would say. You have to be ready. But to answer your specific question, so not surprisingly, the number one way I would say to handle grief is, you need to go to counseling. That's the first thing. It's an objective third party, because something that we learn about when people are grieving is they feel like they're a burden to everyone around them. They don't want to talk about their grief because that's going to make you sad. You know, if I tell you how upset I am that I lost my son, well, that's just going to make you cry, and I don't want to make you cry.
Yeah.
And kids feel that too, right? Like, they don't want to talk to their mom about how torn up they are about their dad dying, because they see that mom's just as sad as they are. So they're going to bottle it up. But if you bring them to me, they don't have any allegiance to me. They don't care if I'm upset. I'm their therapist. That's my job.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So that's the first thing I would say. They probably do need counseling. And it looks very different than they think. Sometimes it means they just need to come to our groups, because we do group counseling.
Okay.
They can meet other kids or other adults. We have an adult group who have experienced loss and be able to be in a room with them. And that's very healing. So that's one. Number two, how to handle grief. I would say developing some emotional intelligence. Yeah. And that's a journey.
That's good.
That's a journey, because I like to say that kids and adults are good at the big five: mad, sad, happy, glad, angry. They know those emotions. We know how to feel them. We don't know how to feel betrayed or jealous or disappointed or despondent. We don't know what those words mean. We don't know how to feel those, especially when we're 6. So developing some of that language around emotion allows us to access it when we have a trauma.
I like that.
Good.
It's kind of like you're preparing
Yes.
for game day.
Yeah.
It's like practice. I'm at practice, you know, I'm getting my shots up, I'm doing all this, putting all the work in.
Yeah.
So it's tip off time. Now it's time for the game. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I like that.
And a practical application of that is just in your home. Like you asked how parents and even educators, so even in schools, it's using emotional vocabulary, right? So we need to talk about feelings. We don't just shy away from it, especially, and this is like another whole soapbox, so all I'm going to say is, especially with boys, you know, it's okay to talk about emotion. It's okay for boys or male-presenting individuals to feel feelings. They've got feelings too.
Yes.
We need to make sure that they're okay to access that our kids are used to talking about emotions, because we can't expect them to know how to regulate their emotions if they don't even have the words to describe them.
That's good.
Yeah.
We talk about that, about how, you know, we raise, you know, boys to be strong and tough and to hide their emotions, which, you know, basically strips their voice when they get older. We was talking about that.
Yeah, they actually grow up to be men with those same conditions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have,
exactly.
We have emotionally unavailable men, ladies and gentlemen, and it's bad. Yeah. And it's a product of our own design. We've done it.
We're training them in that way.
Yes.
So yeah, we've got to be aware as parents, like the things, because we're not just raising kids, we're raising adults. So we got to be able to see and recognize in us the things that we're not building up in them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
You got one more?
I do. So yeah. And then the other thing that I would say, so I talked about not shying away from like talking about death. That also means being very open and honest in an age appropriate fashion with our little people about what that means. Because something that we don't think about as adults is how we phrase the language around death and loss. And it's in the smallest of ways. Like when somebody dies, we say they passed away. Well, we know what that means because we're grown-ups. But a 5-year-old does not know what that means. And then they're scared and they're confused and they don't even know how to ask, but what does that mean? Because they're 5 and they're not at the developmental stage to know to ask that question. But if we say they died, they know what death means. They're not able to understand the permanence of it. They don't get the full totality of what death is, but they have a clearer understanding when we use the right language. And we have to be so careful about that as a world, honestly. Because again, we're not equipping them with the tools that they need to be able to successfully grieve when we don't even use the right language. Yeah.
That's good. That makes sense too.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's so simple, but yet
it's not.
You know, it's not. And and depending on your culture, your religion,
Yes.
it also will, when you say somebody passed away, and then they'll ask you, well, did they go to heaven, or did they do this, or did it?
Right.
And so that's when you can kind of put it on their level, like you said, so they can understand and kind of receive it, but yet understand that, hey, this is a part of life.
Yes, it's a part of the life cycle. Everything dies in some form or another. And we teach kids that, but we tend to think that like they're too precious or they're too young or they're too innocent to know what that means. And they're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
Gotcha. You got something you wanted to add, Dwayne?
Oh, that's good.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question then, Miss Lexie.
Yes.
All right. So, how do you balance the need for confidentiality with the involvement of parents or guardians in your counseling processes for minors?
Yeah. Confidentiality is huge. It's the most important thing that I talk about with kids, parents, with anybody, with any client of mine. But man, is it touchy. Especially when you got parents involved or guardians, what have you. So yeah, the number one thing that I do with a kid, no matter what their age is, right? It doesn't matter if they're 4 or if they're 18. Okay. When they come to me is I have an ethical obligation to explain confidentiality to them. They've literally got to have informed consent. They got to know what those rules are. And so I put it in age-appropriate terms. But, I explain to them what confidentiality means. And that means, hey, what happens in here stays in here.
Okay.
For little kids, I tell them that the words stick to the walls like glue. They don't go anywhere. I'm not going to share their secrets. That means I'm not going to tell mom what you tell me. Because it ain't her business. Yeah. I have to create a safe space. That is my job.
Yes.
For them to have a safe space. So that means I'm not going to tell. I have to get them to trust me. But the thing is, not all parents understand that.
Wow.
True.
Yeah, and that's what makes my job real hard. Because I love working with parents because it's necessary. We know that the number one indicator of whether a child is going to be successful in adulthood is if they have supportive adults around them. That's the number one indicator. So if you have adults in their life that are trying to undermine the therapeutic process, well, we've got issues.
Yeah.
And I've had parents take their kids out of counseling because they think that I'm not telling them what's going on. I've had parents, after they hear the limits of confidentiality, how I'm not going to tell them unless I think the kid's unsafe, basically, be like, oh, well, then this is not for us. Sorry. And they don't want me to see them anymore. And that hurts my heart.
Yeah.
But it's the reality. So it's a fine line.
Wow. And it's amazing because we spoke about this kind of sort of with a previous episode, even when it comes to mentoring. And sometimes, we have a confidentiality roles as well. And so what we discovered is how I look at it. I try to explain to the parent, as long as they're talking to us, then at least someone is in the know rather than them keeping it bottled in, and then the result may be something that you really don't want. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I try to explain the exact same things to parents, right? And I'm like, look, I want to meet with you because, hey, you're their person. You're the adult in their life. Like, if I can't meet with you, then no progress is going to be made because the child's success in therapy is only half of it. It's also they're at the mercy of their environment. They're at the mercy of the people that they live with. So I have to do that, but I just have to toe a very fine line. Like, I'm not going to share details about what that kid tells me.
For sure.
I'll talk in terms of progress. I'll talk in terms of goals, treatment plans if you want to get clinical, like whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be specific. And some parents or adults, they are not okay with that.
Yeah.
And and that just means that I don't even know, actually. I don't have an answer for that one.
And we often say that we like to create a safe place. As long as you're not talking about hurting yourself or hurting someone else, let's talk.
Yep, that's it.
And they need that.
They do. They need it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you have to do is build that rapport, that trust.
Yes.
And if they know that everything that I say could possibly go back to a parent, they're not finna open up.
They ain't gonna tell me nothing.
Finna open up, man.
Right, no.
If that was the case, they'd be at home talking to their mom or dad or parent, from the jump.
Yes.
Well, and something that also, and I don't have kids, so I don't know. I can't imagine how hard it is to reconcile with your kid not wanting to like share something with you. I can imagine how hard that is, but I can only imagine because I'm not a parent. I get it. But kids, like, especially, well, look, I'll pertain it to teenagers, right? Teenagers have 2 jobs. Their first job is to hang out with their friends as much as possible. That is their first job. Their second job is to increasingly gain independence. That means they ain't gonna want to tell mama every single thing that they're doing in their life.
Yeah.
Their job is to become independent. They're gearing up for adulthood. They're a teenager. That starts at age 10. That starts at age 10. That's when those developmental markers come into play. So that's really young, but that means if they have someone like me, hi, Miss Lexie, who they can talk to and tell the stuff that they don't want to tell mom or dad or grandma or whoever, then they have a safe person watching out for them.
Yeah. I think it's also, we was talking about the parents and them not or wanting to talk to them or not wanting to. I think it's all about how mature the parent is, how knowledgeable they are in that area, and the relationship that they've built with their child. And I mean, I would hate to be in a situation where now my sons, when they get old, they may not want to come talk to me for whatever reason.
Right.
But I would like to have that door open.
Yeah.
They'll go through that because I got some older ones. Yeah.
He said, I'm already
but I'm
there.
just saying, like no matter how great the relationship is, that may not be a topic that they just want to talk to you about. Yeah. So you have to be cool with them getting help from somebody.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's about. It ain't about who gets to shine to get the glory. Right. You know, it's about them getting the help. It's about them breaking through. So that's my thing.
That's why we say it takes a village.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it does. Like I can be part of the village if you let me.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we all, I mean, I would recommend everybody, if you're having any type of issues, you're struggling in any kind of way, I would recommend that you do go see a counselor. There's nothing wrong with that.
Please.
I think people put that negative spin on it, like, man, you got to go see a shrink and all that. No, I'm going to get help, bro. I'm struggling. You know what I'm saying?
The ironic thing is that our young people, like the kids, like y'all have seen it, I'm sure, they are getting so much better about talking about mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And talking about, like, going to therapy. They joke about it. They're like, listen to what my therapist said. Like, you know, it's like it's like a thing, right? And I love it.
Yes.
Because it normalizes it. Like, that's my whole purpose. Like, I'm like, it needs to be normalized.
Good.
Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Treat it that way.
That is good.
That's spot on. Say that one more time.
Your mental health is just as important as your physical health.
Come on.
Treat it that way.
Come on.
That's good.
You working out your physical body. You need to work that mind out.
Right.
You need to go get that help. Ain't nothing wrong with it.
They
nothing
are
wrong with it.
Together.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. So let me ask you this right here, and then we can close it on out. You moving right on along.
Yeah.
Miss Lexie Mauldon, she on point tonight.
This is good too, because even though you're talking about the perspective of teens and so on, but I'm listening and I'm sure that there's a lot of this information that can be utilized for adults.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's what I'm loving this.
Good.
That's good stuff. We've enjoyed it.
I'm glad.
So let's keep it moving. Here we go. It says, what motivates you to continue working in the field of a youth grief counselor, and what do you hope to achieve through your work in the future?
That's the forward-thinking question.
Man.
What keeps me doing it? Well, the easy and hard answer is the kids, right? Like, it's seeing that change, because it's a slow process, but I get to see the results. You know, I see these kids open up. I watch them go from not being able to literally even sit down and talk about their day, much less their feelings. I see them, like, being so unwilling to... Oh, you're okay. I see them being so unwilling to trust me, like, that it's crazy. Like, I see it in their eyes. Like, I'm never going to speak to this lady. I'm going to sit in silence. Yeah. Like,
yes.
Like, they're testing me. And that's fine. I love a challenge. Until eventually, like, I chisel away at them. And then they start opening up. And they tell me things that they're going through. And then they tell me, like, what they're afraid of, and they share their feelings, and I'm able to help them. And then they come back to me, I don't know, months later. I've had a client come back to me a year after we terminated, so I wasn't seeing them anymore, and just be like, hey, I just wanted to thank you. You know, it's like it's a teenage girl, and she's like, you're the reason I'm here.
Wow.
Like, you kept me here. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go cry now. Like, I'm going to go in my office and cry. But that's why. Yeah. You know?
So the success stories that you get.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this then. So which one motivates you more? When you have that breakthrough and that success, or when you don't, or when one, where you feel like you dropped the ball, where you just didn't, you didn't reach them where you felt like you should have reached. Which one motivates you more?
Oh gosh, both. I have dropped the ball so many times. Every counselor has. If they tell you that they haven't, they're lying. Because it happens. And it terrifies me. It terrifies me. And it's heartbreaking. And it does make me want to keep trying. Because like I said, I do like a challenge. I'm not one to shy away. But that's hard. And it really, I've questioned it before. I've been like, should I still do this? Do I still have it? Because they just walked out my door and they're never coming back.
Yeah.
But then again, I get another girl or person, teenage girl maybe, in front of me, and I do make that connection.
Gotcha.
And it makes up the difference.
So it balances out in the end.
It balances out, yeah.
I know I've come across some kids where it feel like, you giving them your all.
You laugh,
and it's like, you talking to them, you're around them, you're helping them, and just like, bro, you just don't get it.
No. And they're just not ready. That's the thing. Like, there are no bad kids. They're just bad situations. They're a product of their environment most of the time. And you can't fault them for that. Like, they only know what they've been taught. They only know what they've been able to observe through their home life or what's going on in the world around them. And we can't make them the villain in their story, because if we do that, then we can't help them. But sometimes they're just not ready for our help.
Okay.
And we got to play the waiting game.
So it's just, they want the help. They need the help. It's just bad timing.
Well, and yes, it's just bad timing. And also, like, you have to think about it. You've heard of, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, at the bottom is, like, water, food, shelter. And then we get into things like friendship, love. And at the very top is, like, self-actualization. That's what it's called. So reaching, like, self-acceptance, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's that, but kind of, like, for life. So sometimes kids are brought to me and I'm like, they're still experiencing a trauma. Like, I can't address their grief because I first have to get them to a place to where they can even function day to day. So I can't do grief counseling with them, but what I can do is just give them support. So we also have to learn to meet kids where they're at.
Okay.
Because they're not always ready for the help that we think we want to give them. We have to figure out what help they do need. Sometimes it's not us. Sometimes it's someone else. Maybe I call y'all and I'm like, hey, they need to come to Jump because they're not ready for me, but they just need some support here in this space. And eventually they'll grow to be ready.
We can definitely tell the passion in what you're doing and your heart that's in it. And we love connecting with people that that's in the field that they are in, but yet they have a heart to go on with it. And so that means a lot to us. And then we will say too, she comes and help over here to Jump sometime to her services, so we're just grateful for that. The kids love you and we appreciate you so very much. And is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say, or anything?
I mean,
anything.
It's a conversation that could last for days, obviously.
No, go ahead.
No, I appreciate you guys. You mentioned that I come to Jump, and I love it. I love every single thing that you guys do here.
Thank you.
I told you earlier, I promote y'all all the time. I'm like, have you been to the Rescue Me Project? You need to see it. Like, you need to see their game room. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Oh my gosh. Like, I love it.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I think that what you guys do here is incredible.
Thank you.
It's important. And I see the kids out in the community and the way that they get the support that they need here is some kind of incredible. So you guys are doing it too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, okay, here go another question. So how important do you believe it is for us all to work together like that? Not just the Healing Place, the Rescue Project, the Jump, but like getting involved with like other nonprofits to really to see the broader picture, I guess you would say, and to bring it all together for one common goal, if that makes sense.
I think it's the most important. That's what we should be doing. Like, that's our purpose, right? If we're in this field, it's because we're trying to achieve something like that. We don't do it for the money, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We're here because we care.
Yes.
So that's I know. So that's the thing. And if we can figure out those avenues to work together instead of trying to compete with each other, that's what we need to do. Because the more access that the kids have to us in various different ways, again, the bigger the village that they have.
That's good.
And they need their village.
Yeah,
that's good. I agree with you on that. Because it's like you just said, though, it's like if we can help in various places. Yeah. So, 10, 15 organizations come together like, hey, we're doing this. hey, you guys, and we can help you guys with this. You guys come over, and we all kind of, you know, mix and mingle together. So now we're touching more lives. More kids are being exposed to more mentors, more people that actually care, more people that they can see sacrifice. Because sacrifice is the ultimate side of love. You show me somebody that's not sacrificing, I can question their love. But as long as I see you sacrificing, oh, I know you love what you're doing and you love that person you're sacrificing for. So when these kids see that from more people, and then they see us out in the community, but I've seen kids out in the stores, they come up and, you know what I'm saying, act like, you know, I'm the greatest thing in the world. I'm just like, man, I'm only giving you like an hour or 2 hours a week.
Yeah, I know.
But it makes that big of a difference.
Yes.
Because they see something different.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. They see somebody that's on their side.
Yes.
And you would be shocked. Well, we wouldn't, but some people would be shocked about the amount of kids that don't have anybody on their side. They don't have anybody rooting for them. And that's the main thing. Like, we have this really cheesy saying in therapy, and it says the therapeutic relationship is the vehicle for change, which is just a fancy way of saying that, like, all of these theories and fancy words and schooling that I have don't mean nothing if I don't make a connection with my client.
Yes.
If I don't build that rapport. Like, that's the number one thing that I'm giving them, is I'm being a supporter. I'm being that safe space. Again, that's what we all can do, though. We all can kind of take a line from that book and be the vehicle for change for these kids.
Sweet.
So,
like
so since she's here on behalf of the Healing Place,
yes.
How do people get plugged in? And I heard you said that y'all offer services to adults too.
Yes, we do. So if you don't know, the Healing Place, we're a nonprofit. We're located in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And our main thing is that we offer grief support and education to children and their families. And families include adults.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So, yeah, mainly we do counseling services, grief support services for those kids. That can look like one-on-one things, like you come, you meet with Miss Lexie or one of our other great people. We have support groups. So every other Thursday, we have support groups. And those are all ages. So that means that there are 4 support groups going on at one time. Separated by age. So we got littles, middles, teens, and adults. And they all meet. So that means you can come and be in a group while your kid's in a group or while a little person in your life, even if it's not your kid, is in a group. And everybody gets helped. And that's a beautiful thing. We do special services, special support services. We do crisis response. We do a lot. If it has to do with a death or a loss in the community, we're usually there. We're online. You can find us at thehealingplaceinfo.org. There's resources there. If y'all need community resources, y'all are on there. Y'all are on our community resources page because people need to know how to get in contact with y'all too. And then all kind of other fun stuff are located on there. How we're funded, how we need funded, all that type of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, it's all on there. And then of course we're on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. Go check us out. It's cool. It's a great place.
That's good. So are y'all in the schools too?
Yes. Oh my, that's one of the main things that we do. We have a school program coordinator. Her name is Katie McWilliams. Shout out because she's great. She goes into, she mainly handles our schools. We all pitch in. We're in over 50 schools in Lauderdale, Colbert, and Franklin counties.
Wow.
Yeah. So we go to these schools once a month and we do a Healing Hearts group. So that means these kids can come out of class, go to a grief support group while they're at school.
That's good.
Yeah, so we don't have a transportation issue, right? They do that. They see other kids in their schools that have also experienced a loss, so they know that they're not alone.
Yes.
Which is really powerful. And last year, I want to say that there were over like 500, close to 600 kids just in our school program.
Seriously, is that many kids that deal with that? Like
just
on that
in the
level?
schools, though. Then you add hundreds more for like in office, for the support groups in the office. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
So and again, you got to think about the broad spectrum of grief that they deal with as well.
True. True.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I love it. Any closing things for you, Zoe?
I'm good. I'm flow with you, bro. We can close it out, man.
I guess we'll close it out then. Again, this is the Elevated Chat Room. We thank you all so much for tuning into this broadcast. Again, thank you, Ms. Lexie, for being with us on tonight. And till next time, everything that you learn, we hope that it's something that will help elevate your mind so that it can elevate your life. Thank you so very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
We out.